are kind of standing in the ashes of plan A, the life that we knew a month ago that we've stepped away from, into this whole nother reality. And for me, doing this, making this kind of radical change, for me started many years ago. Mary Beth shared with all of you how she sat on our board and the contributions that she has made over the many years to the Jenna Druck Center. And the Jenna Druck Center started, for me, life turned on a dime in 1996. My oldest daughter, Jenna, was on a study abroad program, and the bus that they were on to the Taj Mahal flipped over. And the phone rang at 10 o'clock at night, and my life as I knew it ended. You know, life stopped in that moment, and I was standing in a new normal. I would be asked to live out the rest of my life without my beloved Jenna. And that flooded me with choices. You know, some part of what we go through when something terrible happens is choiceless. We go through it. We hold on for dear life. We fight our way back into life with every ounce of strength that we have. But then at some point we get to make some choices. And the choice for me was to honor my daughter by living out the rest of my days in a way that would be purposeful and meaningful. And so I have done that through the Jenna Druck Center, through the support and love of the people around me to hold me up, to help me fight my way back into life. And I started the Jenna Druck Center thinking that we would only be getting, the phone would be ringing, we'd only be getting calls from people who had suffered life losses, like the many tens of thousands of people worldwide right now that are spending their first moments, hours, days, dealing with the fact that they're going to be living out the rest of their lives without somebody they love, or the people that are facing the possibility of their own death, and doing so often alone in a hospital where they can't be surrounded by the people they love to comfort them. But the phone would ring at the Jenna Druck Center after a year or so, and it was people who had not suffered a life loss. Nobody had died, but they had a son or a daughter or a husband or a wife who was strung out on drugs, who was an alcoholic, who was estranged, who was incarcerated, deployed, who had gotten a bad diagnosis, who had been in an accident. And they were suffering something that I came to call a living loss. Well, in this new normal, we've suffered so many living losses. Life as we knew it is gone. We're home alone. We're home, many of us alone, or we're home with our families. Well, I didn't sign up for homeschooling my kids. I didn't sign up for a marriage retreat. I'm here with my husband or my wife. I didn't sign up to work remotely at home. I didn't sign up, if you're a kid from college, to come home, to be home from college. I thought I just left home, you know, or I wasn't the parent that signed up to have my adult child come back and live at home with us. I also didn't sign up, if I have an aging parent, to be so worried about them wherever they are. Are they going to be okay? What's it going to be like not being able to be with them? So all of us are finding ourselves in a new normal, having suffered living losses and facing into challenges, being challenged to meet those challenges. And we're going to talk about what some of them are. And this is a moment of truth in so many of our lives. You know, moments like this may never happen again in our lives, where we really have a choice. Are we going to become the best version of ourselves or the worst? Are we going to use this opportunity, this crisis? And the Chinese word for crisis combines the symbol of danger and opportunity. Are we going to meet the challenges that all of us are facing? And we're all different. We're all facing different challenges. Some of us are at the epicenter. You know, somebody we love, their life is hanging in the balance, or our life is hanging in the balance, or we know somebody who died, or our life has been turned inside out and upside down. We have no idea how we're going to feed our family, how we're going to conduct our career, how we're going to pay the mortgage, how we're going to function, what the uncertain future holds for us. And so some of us are at that part, we're at the epicenter, feeling tremendous fear and anxiety and anguish and kind of lost. And some of us are just counting our blessings. We have a roof over our head. Thank God everybody around us is well. We have enough food. We have a career that is going to be able to carry us out. We're not immediately concerned, and we're feeling blessed and protected. So wherever you find yourself, this is about meeting those challenges, and not just meeting the challenges and dealing with the losses we've suffered and getting ourselves aligned and summoning newfound strength and courage and patience and kindness and self-compassion and self-care. But it's also about harvesting the opportunities. How many of us have experienced opportunities in the last month or two? Things we never would have done or thought of and considered. Some of us have a lot of time on our hands and we're getting to reflect about our lives, the better version of our lives. We're getting to spend time with our partners, maybe having conversations we haven't had in years, or feeling a closeness we haven't felt in years. Maybe we're with our kids and the conversations that we otherwise would never be having, and a family closeness that we'd never be experiencing is happening right now, And maybe in all this found time, there's a sense of ease about us. We've had our foot on the gas pedal for so long, and now our foot is off the gas pedal. And we're discovering, I wrote an article yesterday that I had discovered the hermit in me and the slug in me, because I've had all this extra time. I've discovered that I kind of enjoy lots of parts of life when I'm not having my foot on the gas pedal, when I'm not moving fiercely from one activity to the next. And I have the luxury of this time, and suddenly I can hear birds singing, and I can watch the sun rising and setting. And I can take time with my loved ones or get on the phone with somebody I'm concerned about just to see how they're doing. So there are opportunities and there are challenges. Now, what are some of those opportunities and challenges? I wrote a couple of them down. And I just wanted to get us started, because what I want to do in a few minutes is I want your questions and concerns. I want this time together that we spend together to be so relevant to you. Not only because you're going to ask questions that really are weighing heavily on your heart, but because you know something, you're figured out something. You have something to contribute to this community, this beautiful Coldwell banker community, and all the people whose lives we touch. So you have something that you can say that's going to help so many people. So what are some of the challenges? Okay, staying healthy above anything else. Taking care of yourself. And most of us are finding out that we're having to download the new operating system for self-care. We can't go out and get a mani or pedi. If you're used to getting kind of the roots darkened, you can't even go out and do that. So we have to find new protocols to wash our hands, to take care of ourselves, to practice self-health and self-care. Other challenges, physical distancing. What's it like being disconnected and apart? What is our personal and social responsibility in social distancing so that we're not making somebody else sick or exposing something? How can we discipline ourselves? Challenge. Discontinuity, disruption, and unknowingness. If you're like me, you're used to controlling things and you're used to being in control, figuring stuff out and fix it. Well, what happens when you can't figure something out and fix it? How do we do then? How do we calm our hearts? Take a deep breath. Think about what our best options are. Threat of loss to heart, to our health and our lives. How many of us have lived under the threat? Somebody told me the other day, they said, the world is coming together. People in Italy are singing on their balconies. People are singing to the doctors and nurses in New York. There's a level of kindness and generosity. We're filling the food banks. We're helping all of those who are struggling terribly at this time. The kindness of the world's heart is coming out because we all are in the same boat. We finally found common ground. We stopped talking about politics and we started to realize we're all feeling the threat of danger, even the threat of loss of life. We're all feeling that we're one droplet away from contracting this virus, or somebody we love is one droplet away, and we need to protect how interconnected we are. We need to be socially and personally responsible. So in some way, our world is coming together. We're beginning to understand that we all live on one planet. This is the one planet, one people coronavirus, as I wrote a couple of weeks ago. Other challenges, the complete loss of normalcy, the threat of our livelihood, our survival, family relationships, the idea that we're having to do things with our families that maybe we've never done or we haven't done in many years, aging parents, uncles, aunts, friends, neighbors, their isolation, their loneliness, how to stay connected, listening to supporting others and advocating for others who are struggling, comforting and memorializing those people who are ill or who even passed. A dear friend of mine, her brother passed this past week, my friend Maria, and she and her family couldn't even be with her brother to comfort him in his final moments at the end of his life. And they're also not going to be able to have a memorial service. Well, is that a challenge? Yeah. How do we memorialize and celebrate somebody's life and express our love for them and turn the page and begin to have those spiritual relationships that we have with those we love, the love that never dies? So becoming a stress case or paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, grieving, stuffing our feelings, resisting, resenting, being stuck. So, or becoming the dumbed down version of ourselves. How many of us have bought more alcohol? How many of us, the first week, it's like, my God, are we drinking another bottle of wine tonight? Or I haven't had, bourbon at night or a cocktail in years. So those are some of the challenges. What are the opportunities? And this is just to get you warmed up, to start talking about the things that are most relevant for you. Opportunities, found time to do spring cleaning, to organize, to reflect. Family closeness, we've talked about that. How about reprioritizing what's really important in your life? There's been time to think about that. What's really important? What's most important? Making decisions about my best possible future. We had time to think. Anybody thinking about going on a vacation next year? Are we going to be able to do that again? Where are you going to go? Are you thinking about that? We have been. Won't that be a blessing? Is that something we took for granted? And making decisions about your best possible future. Hey, I'm with the Coldwell banker crowd here. Some people are sitting at home saying, this place, I would like to live somewhere different. Can we sell this house? I'm thinking about our future in a different way. Can we buy a new house? I'd like to live closer to the grandkids. I'd like to live closer to the beach. I'd like to live with something smaller, managing the family home. It's getting too big and unwieldy. So opportunities to express gratitude towards those people that we normally would take for granted. How about the people who drive food to our supermarket? All those people that we're now appreciating, our doctors and nurses, our healthcare workers, people who are showing up, people in service, the way the military has shown up to stand up and to help with all the healthcare. Some of our governors, our government leaders who've stepped up and shown us what they're made of. So not taking people for granted. There's an opportunity to say thank you, to express gratitude, to become a more courageous and faithful version of ourselves, believing that we're going to be able to figure this out. Grieving in a healthy way the losses that we have suffered, not just burying them, hiding or denying or repressing them. Venting our feelings, trust and confidence. Some of us have had to vent. Well, maybe we found that we can trust each other a little bit more. We can listen better. Let's hope so. Other opportunities to adjust, accept, and to reset. Push the reset button on our lives and to give ourselves the assurances that we're going to put this thing back together even better if we're patient and smart in the way we go about it. Becoming the awakened, not the dumbed down, but the more awakened version of ourselves. Isn't that an opportunity here? And finally, advocating for those people that when we turn on the TV, we see those people who are less fortunate, who are struggling and suffering terribly. So I'm going to ask you to now think about, what have you done that's working? Can you send us a chat message?
So
Tell us
Ken,
what you've done. Huh?
So Ken, we have several questions coming in.
Oh, great. We got questions. Okay. And in between your questions, let's also contribute to the collective wealth of wisdom and knowledge and innovation and creativity in this group, sharing with each other what we've done that's working. Okay.
Thank you. So one of our questions is, how do we involve our young children in a conversation about COVID-19 to not only make the fear safe to talk about, but also have them be better prepared than our generation was to respond?
Oh, what a great question. You know, I wrote a book many years ago called How to Talk to Your Kids. And the first lesson, of course, I go on a show and they'd say, well, Dr. Druck, how do you talk to your kids? And then the first thing I'd say is to not talk. That every good parent who's learned how to listen has scar tissue on their tongue. Let's do the scar tissue test. It's because you bit your tongue, you remained still, and you asked an open-ended question. And instead of feeling like we have to provide all the answers, we have to be the font of all knowledge and parent our children. Instead, let's ask them what they think. Let's draw them out. Let's help them think critically about all the options. Well, what do you think we should do? How do you think we should handle this? What do you think about the virus? What do you think about what's happening? How do you feel about what we're doing so far as a family? Are there things that we could be doing better as a family? Ways that we could be smarter or acting healthier? And get the wealth of their ideas. Create a safe space in your home where your kids can express anything they're feeling, thinking. They can be helped looking at their options, thinking critically without you, and especially the biggest fear kids have, and the biggest conversation killer is a parent who hears something and then what do? They run around with their hair on fire trying to figure it out and fix it. So listen. Your best tool is listening and asking open-ended questions so that they tell you more. Well, what do you think? Have any of your friends told you anything? Ask open-ended questions, not questions laced with a message like, well, what do you know, that's a message disguised as a question. Ask a genuine open-ended question.
Dr. Druck, thank you so much. We're talking about children, and this next question just hits me so strongly to share with you. I live alone, have no family. Most of my contacts have been lost. Do you have email or phone numbers? What are some of the ways I might handle this isolation?
It's huge. First of all, my heart goes out to you. And I'm so glad that you joined this call today, because there are calls like this taking place everywhere. There are virtual communities of people who are isolated, who are alone. You take your pick. I want you or somebody who knows how to do this to Google support groups or discussion groups, and then next to it, put something that would interest you. Discussion group or support group for people who are alone, who want that element of companionship. The second thing I'd say is sometimes, it's worth taking a risk that there might be somebody on your list. If you look at your list and say, oh, you know, who are the people in my life that might welcome a call from me? I might be able to invoke, you know, the least four-letter word in the human vocabulary starts with an H, help. Sometimes we're so proud and we're so fiercely independent, staunchly self-reliant, that we don't ask for help or support or communication or contact. So I would encourage you to think about the people that you could reach out to and say, hey, you know, it's been kind of a lonely time, and it would just be good to hear. Can we talk about what's been going on in each other's lives and what we're doing during this unusual time that we're spending, and how we are, and maybe a couple of conversations about things that, you know, had we spent time together, we might have discussed. So I think reach out, get your old Rolodex out, your old database, find out if there are people on that list that you could take a chance with, and Google where there might be support and discussion groups. They might be happening right next door. They might be happening close by. Give it a chance.
Thank you. Mary Beth?
Yes, we have several questions coming in. What techniques can we use to stay mentally tough in prolonged periods of uncertainty?
Oh, beautiful question. You know, every season of life and every radical change in our life, whether it's a loss, it could be a tremendous success, we could have won the lottery, requires us to summon, and I'm using a word, summon, to call up from within ourselves newfound courage and strength and encouragement and reassurances, and to allow ourselves, here's the major mistake we make. We've grown up in a world and we live in a culture that teaches us that there's a pill for every problem, for every pain, a fix for every problem, a diversion for every moment of emptiness or lostness. And the truth is, there isn't. We can't fix everything. There's no instant quick fix. That sometimes we're asked to sit in a moment of uncertainty and take a deep breath and just breathe into it and say, boy, is this hard. This is really tough for me. And not only to have that thought and that conversation in our own head, but to talk with a trusted confidant, to open up, to talk about it with other people. Hey, this is really tough for me to be in this much uncertainty, especially if you're such a resourceful person who's used to just, all right, I'm going to go find the solution right away. The most resourceful people are the most difficult in times of uncertainty because, you know, the impossible just takes a little longer. What am I not doing? We start beating ourselves up because we're not doing enough, or we're not looking in the right direction. We're not spiritual enough. We're not psychologically strong enough. We're not this enough. Instead of that, my advice is take your foot off your throat and put your hand on your own heart. The practice of self-compassion, of kindness to yourself, of reassurance to yourself, of allowing yourself a period of lostness or anxiety or sadness. You know what that does organically? By accepting yourself and holding yourself in such kindness and gentleness and acceptance, it allows that organic faithfulness, that organic spirit of resilience to begin to arise within you. The strength that you need, the courage you need, the faith that you need begins to arise within you, from within you. Every season of life, everything you've ever gone through, every challenge you've met required you to summon newfound courage and strength and belief in yourself. And so will this COVID-19 virus and the crisis that it's created in so many of our lives, financially, emotionally, psychologically, interpersonally, and so on.
That is so profound, the idea of just, putting your hand on your heart and giving yourself compassion. Thank you. I'd love to read this question. So many poignant things being said here, Dr. Druck. And by the way, everyone, if we don't get to your question on the call, Dr. Druck has kindly said he'd go through the questions after and provide us some more wisdom. So this says, I used to be home very little. Now I'm in a 700 square foot house with our two sons, 16 and 4, while my husband goes to work. I get anxious and frustrated. I can't seem to breathe. Shouldn't be saying that right now. Then I immediately feel horrible for blowing up. I cry every day, sometimes uncontrollably. I made a family schedule. We're on our 3rd revision. It is helping. I've been meditating every day. It's helping too. We go for a 45-minute walk every day. What else can I do?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would add to your list is give yourself a big pat on the back, because this is tough. It's every bit as tough as you've described. But look at what you've done. Look at what you've done already. Trying to put lists together, moving your body, making sure you're moving, acknowledging that you feel kind of claustrophobic, acknowledging how hard this is, reaching out at a moment like this to try to get some support and help and understanding, because I guarantee there are others going through the same thing as you, feeling that same claustrophobia and what can I do? I don't know how long I can do this. And is there something I'm not doing? Should I be adding to my list? I got exercise, I'm doing this. I got the kids, it's difficult. And I would bet that if we sat and brainstormed for a couple of minutes, and I invite you to send me an email, but on that email, send me 10 ideas you have about things that you'd like to add to the list. I mean, look at you, you're meditating, so you're calming yourself. That's part of your resilience. You're strengthening yourself by moving, you're taking care of the kids, you're supporting your husband. But write me 10 more things that you could be saying, how you could be changing the conversation in your own thoughts, how you could be doing something different. Like one of the things we discovered, my partner and I discovered that if we set a date every night, we would have something to look forward to. So we'd say, hey, we normally, it's like rush into dinner, but it's like, hey, what do you want for dinner? What should we have for dinner tonight? And you might do that with your husband. Would you have a dinner and Netflix date with me? Something to look forward to. Something to look forward to tonight, something to look forward to in the next couple of days that you might be able to do together when he's off work. Something you could do with the kids, a creative project for grandma or grandpa or for their school, or something you could do for the family. But come up with 10 ideas, send them to me, and we'll figure it out, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. So we have another question here. What do you say to friends who get ticked because you want to practice social distancing, which I personally call physical distancing, and they don't understand the seriousness of what's going on and think you're being ridiculous and fearful?
Yeah. You know what you say to them? No, I'm teasing. That's not what you say to them. You know what? It's not time for an argument. It's not time to get into a debate. It's not time. And people who want to pour fuel on the fire of who's right and who's wrong, is it a hoax? Is it a conspiracy and something that's being exaggerated in the frame of paranoid politics? Or is it for real? Is it something I would ask you to please respect because I feel vulnerable in a way I've never felt vulnerable. And I'm asking everybody, including members of my own family, to please respect this distance, to please not add to my feelings of vulnerability. I feel vulnerable enough. Would you please respect that and agree to maintain a distance with me? Can I please ask that? And get an agreement. Close the deal. And
We're
if
all
somebody,
salespeople. We know how to close a
huh?
deal. We're salespeople. We know how to close a deal.
Thank you, but you got to close the deal. Do I have your agreement? Do I have your assurance?
Dr.
And people
Druck,
who don't, yeah.
if I may, this next question, I don't know anyone on this call who might not be feeling this, but let me tell you what it says. I worry about how we will go back to hugging and being close to the people who are dear to us. I'll just add, someone today called me and said they couldn't wait to meet me and give me a hug. They've been on these Zoom calls. So what do you say to that fear we may experience?
Well, the first thing I would say is I want to share with you something my father-in-law taught me. And because every time I have visited him, and he's extremely ill, but every time I visited, I'm at my 15-foot distance, he holds his hands up like this. And he says, this is a hug. He says, Ken, I want you to feel this. This is me hugging you. And he's taught me, and so when I come in, I look at him and I say, this is me hugging you back. And this is the way we hug right now. And I will tell you that I don't feel 1 ounce less of his love. And not 1 ounce less of my love is expressed. So if for a while we're all learning what it's going to take to be safe, to prevent what would be a tragedy of contaminating one another because we don't have symptoms and we might not know that we're still carrying the virus. While we're learning, let's practice. I'm going to call it Beto's hug. That's what we'll call it, Beto's hug. Let's do this, but pour that love into your hands and feel the love that you're giving and allow the other person to feel it as well. So I think let's take it in steps and stages. Just as we've learned, how awkward was it? How awkward has it been the last 2 months to kind of redefine our physical distance from each other, to walk 6 feet away, to quell any resentment we have when somebody's walking around without a mask, coughing, sneezing, and disregarding other people. We're going to have to re-enter that new normal after this normal begins to pass. And let's do it with the same patience, sensitivity, and new tools that we've gained during this crisis. Okay?
That's beautiful. Beto's hug. I love it. So another question that came up is, how will the world look after the coronavirus pandemic, do you think? And will it change the world forever, for the good or for the bad?
Both. It's going to be a decision. We can't control the universe or the world. There are parts of what will happen in this world that we as individuals can influence by becoming the better version of us, by modeling it for our kids, by modeling it in our companies, in our work relationships, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, and within ourselves and the way we treat ourselves. Compassion for other people starts with self-compassion. So becoming that better version of ourselves is something we can control from here by becoming that better version, by really doing a self-audit and saying, how patient am I being with other people? How sensitive and respectful am I being with other people? How direct and forthright in my communications and yet respectful am I being with other people? Am I really becoming the better version of myself? How demanding am I becoming of people being honest and proactive and getting out in front of situations that represent a danger to all of us? What is my integrity audit tell me that I could become I could even have greater integrity? What am I realizing? You know, there was an exercise when we all talked, I shared with you that I've been doing on several of my podcasts. And it's inviting people to write a letter to the future of themselves, my future self, my letter to my future self, and date it 6 months from now. And write in that letter all the things that you have learned that you could do to become the better version of yourself. The things that your company could do to become the better version of itself, that your family could do, your community, that this country could do, that the world could do to become the better version of itself. And set your sights on that, write it down so that 6 months from now, you read it and you see, how am I doing? If this was the goal, if this was my aspiration for turning that crisis that I experienced into an opportunity, how am I doing? What do I need to remind myself of? Because I've gotten so lost in the weeds again. I'm so much back into the game. I'm back into the play of life. I'm busy all over again. I'm running from one thing to the next all over again. I'm shuttling the kids from one thing to the next. Our marriage is the same as if we find ourselves going back into that. Let's remember to take with us what we learned, what sensitivities, what ahas, what awakenings occurred for us that would make us into that better version of ourselves. And I think if we make that choice, and if we bring that into our culture as a business, into our community as a citizen, into our nation, you know, we remind our politicians of what we want them to be, of what leadership was, what we realized leadership was during this crisis, what helped us, what helped our nation, our neighbors, our doctors, our hospitals, what helped us arise to meet this challenge and this
Dr.
crisis.
Druck, that is so powerful. I want to sorry to interrupt, but you just gave us the best challenge and the best opportunity to really make this work for all of us. So everybody on this call, I know Coldwell Banker West, Peter will run with this, and that is, let's each write down the 10 things that we can do, take from now, that will take forward with us. So when the hustle and bustle starts again, we don't forget these lessons. So thank you for that beautiful advice. I would love
and Penny, by the way,
Mm.
Penny, you're already doing it. This call is doing it. You reaching out to everybody and creating this event is doing it. So part of that list, it should be, let's continue under your leadership and Mary Beth, and Peter, Corey, and let's continue to do the things. Let's not get swayed from the things we've already been doing, because you guys are great. The reason I'm here with you is because you're a great organization. Let's continue to do the things we've already been doing right.
I see us
and the way we treat you.
I see us having you back 6 months from the time this has changed, and you're going to remind us. Deal?
Deal.
This next question.
Instead of a shake, you can use this as a shake, as a handshake and a hug. It has a dual purpose too. Okay.
Terrific. So this next question, really, first of all, to your husband, Anna, and to you, thank you. Husband is a first responder. How do I cope with this challenge and not being able to control what's happening with his job? My stress level is high.
My next door neighbor is an emergency room physician. And I take advantage of all. I know he's coming home, he's exhausted. I work with the police. I work with firefighters locally. I work with the Navy SEALs. I work with first responders. I worked side by side with first responders after 9/11, after Sandy Hook, and so on. And I join you in, first of all, saying thank you, a heartfelt thank you. But what we have an opportunity to say as well here is to say thank you to the wives and the husbands who have an additional challenge that we didn't mention on our list. And that's the challenge of being an exemplar of support, of what it means to support somebody who's in the trenches and on the front lines. And what additional challenges that requires. And not only their spouse, but their kids. Because how do we, our self-care, our support, our emotional understanding of what he or she is going through every single day, our ability to sit and listen in a supportive role is so much more advanced than the average bear. So first of all, to honor yourself for the great challenge that you are facing. The second thing I'll say is that when I wait for my next door neighbor to talk with him, it's because I've become his supporter and advocate. And I almost feel like every person who's a first responder needs, and this is part of what we did after 9/11, we would assign every single first responder a sponsor. You know how they do in AA? Everybody gets a sponsor, somebody you can call night or day, just to say, hey, I just needed a hand on my heart. Because that's what every first responder needs, is that hand on their heart. And even if their spouse is not able to listen at the moment, it's going to take 2 or 3 or 4 of us to hold them tight, to assure them, to give them what they need to fill their cup again, to replenish, to become that resilient version of themselves, because what they're dealing with, most of us can't even imagine.
Thank you, Ken, so much. There's so many of our friends and family and neighbors that are on the front lines. Thank you for that. Another question came in. I can't see my mother since the Alzheimer's care centers locked down. I FaceTime her and the med techs, and they send me photos and videos of her, but it's not the same as sitting next to her and talking to her. I pray she feels she has not been abandoned or will forget about who I am by the time we do get to be with her again.
You know, the next best thing that we get is our little phone that has FaceTime, our Zoom calls, our portals. Lisette and I just bought a portal. Here I am advertising portals for Facebook, a Facebook portal which we communicate with our grandkids and our parents on, and our kids on. So it isn't the same as being there, but it's the next best thing, is to ask for the help wherever our parents are, whatever condition they're in, to ask for help from wherever they are, to set up an iPad or a computer, and to allow us to begin and them to do the best we can do to try to communicate. You know, look, we've been on the phone for a while now, and I wish I could see a couple of your faces, but I wish I could see all of your faces, because we can get used to, it's not the best thing, but it's the next best thing. We can get used to being together and sharing intimately and personally from our hearts and expressing the love and concern that we have for each other. We can do that with our aging parents virtually, but it's going to take a little bit of practice. Let yourself take some time, get comfortable, and I hope it works out. And I hope that the love that you feel you're able to convey virtually. I know it's possible. Give it a chance.
Such great advice. Thank you. I would love to just shift to this next question. I think to the challenge you've given us, what do you recommend for prioritizing and goal setting? I'd like to spend this time to reset and figure out my purpose and set some goals.
What an amazing time to do that. What a noble quest.
Mm-hmm.
To take time with your personal self. It's like, remember me? We look in the mirror and you say, remember me? I know you've been busy for a lot of years, but remember me? You know, could we kind of do a little bit of an audit, a little self-audit, and see, kind of check in on how we're doing and what our best possible future might look like if we made a few little adjustments. It doesn't have to be turning the ship, the aircraft carrier. Sometimes it's the smallest little thing that we do, goal that we set. You know, this year, one of my biggest goals was to read a book on my deck. To take a book and sit out on my beautiful deck and read a book. You know, it doesn't have to be changing the world or moving to Spain or anything like that. It can be something very simple and very subtle. But I think it starts with that self-audit. The beginning of my book, The Real Rules of Life, I have a self-audit. And I think I might also have it on my website. So you could go there and or if you want a copy, please, you can contact me and I'll see if I can get you a copy. But it's a great self-audit. It's kind of looking in the mirror and asking all the questions. I thought of every possible question, and then I had readers calling me and saying, hey, you left out this question. And when we redid the book, we put in that question. So it's a great self-audit. And I think taking the time to ask yourself in the quiet of your own thoughts, and then maybe to reflect out loud with somebody you trust, with your partner, tell them what you've been thinking and see what they think. And they may add something very special. They, you know, you've been talking about that for long, or you used to think that, or, you know, I'm so glad to hear you. They may encourage you. So sometimes sharing it and then writing it down. That's a way of making a beginning of a commitment, is by putting it down in writing so that it's crystal clear to the future you, what you wanted, what you thought, and what would be necessary, what the critical path to completing that goal might involve. So good for you for doing that.
So auditing yourself, telling someone else, sharing it, write it down, and then I would imagine act on it, right? Begin to implement in small increments, as you said.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
You know, there's one more thing to that. One of the things we do when we set goals that we forget to do is we don't know that we have saboteurs, goal-setting saboteurs, things that sneak in the middle of the night to sabotage our top goals. And you also, I think, need to take time to say, what could stand in the way and inhibit me from achieving this goal? What might I allow to slow me down from achieving this goal? What justification might I pull out of the sky to make an excuse for not going after this goal? So we also need to know what our saboteurs are. In my little handbook of self-care, I have the 7 self-care saboteurs. You know, we all know what we have to do to take better care of ourselves, but we don't do it. Why? Because we have self-care saboteurs. Well, we have goal-setting saboteurs as well. And if we know what they are, we can get out in front of them. Get out in front of the saboteur curve, just like we get out in front of the pain curve by taking an aspirin before the pain comes back.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. I love that. Well, we have someone that has a 9-year-old child, and they have been coming up with a wonderful daily routine, including homeschooling, cooking, chores, working, outside activities, and fun. Also nap times and going to bed early, and it's working. So keeping that routine and schedule.
So how do we all, can we give a Zoom standing ovation to that person? And, you know, just a thank you, congratulations, you're doing great. If you could hear us all giving you a standing ovation. What do we have, 500, 600 people, 1,000 people? Picture yourself standing on stage, telling about what you have accomplished, what you figured out, what you are mastering, how well you are doing. And feel the pride and the acknowledgement, the validation of everything that it's taken for you to get to this point. And not that there won't be challenges ahead, but just stop and take your applause in this moment. Standing ovation.
So, Dr. Druck, I don't know if you'll recall, but someone is asking that book that you read on your deck. Did you finish the book? I'm curious. And do you recall what the book was?
It's my goal, because it's my goal, and I am wide open for your suggestions. I have not decided, but it's my goal to read a book this year on my deck. The problem with me is I'm, you know, don't let anybody tell you, by the way, that being my age isn't one of the most creative periods of life. I am writing voluminously. So I end up, you know, it's like, I'm going to go out to the deck and read a book, but I end up starting to write a new one of my own, or a new article of my own. And, you know, I want to, especially now with everything that's going on in our country, but I'm wide open for suggestions. I'm wide open. If you've read a book that you love and that you feel would be the perfect book for me to read this year, I'm absolutely wide open to your suggestions.
Okay, following that and talking about voluminous writing that you're doing, in times of high stress, innovation is born. How can we use this crisis to tap into human creativity?
Yeah. When do we, you know, if we asked everybody on this call, please send in where and when and how you are at your most creative. There'd be somebody who would say, in the shower, in the shower. Oh my God, all my best ideas, I get them in the shower. Other people would say, you know, I get the best ideas when I'm just relaxing, I'm meditating, I'm in chill mode, you know, or I get my ideas when I'm doing my hike. It's like I get on my hiking trail and boy, whatever creativity is, wherever it comes from, I become the source of it. So I think part of creativity is knowing where you go, what you're doing, or what you're not doing, that allows that creative juice to flow in you, that allows ideas and schemes and, you know, your imagination. Our imagination is this extraordinary capability we have. Do you know we can take thinking experimental steps into the future with our minds? It's called our imagination. And how we reimagine. The subtitle of one of my Courageous Aging book is Reimagining Your Best Possible Future. Well, let's get good at reimagining. How do we reimagine? Where do we reimagine? What are we doing or what are we not doing? And most often it involves quieting all the noise. Most often it involves being in the safe company of others who are open to thinking in judgment-free zones, where people aren't rushing to see who is competing for the best idea. They're helping draw each other out in creative teams. Question I would ask you and your team is there room for creativity in your staff meetings? Is it a safe place to think outside the box, outside the circle, to come up with wild ideas and to have them supported and explored and entertained the possibilities, the greater possibilities? Is it safe to do that in your marriage? Is it safe to do that with your kids? Is it safe to let that creative side of you express itself? So many of us have learned to inhibit and to shush and to quiet down that most creative side of us, the more playful, lighthearted, creative, expressive side. And that might be on your goals list, is to lighten up, is to free yourself to be more expressive, to be more open, to be more generous in sharing your thoughts and creative ideas, not only with yourself, but with other people.
So we're going to put you on the spot for a little bit of a specific advice on that creativity. When co-parenting, which is hard in normal times and can feel impossible in this new era, how do we creatively organize ourselves? What are some ideas that you would give to our parents in co-parenting and keeping it light and creative?
I would start it off. It's a great question. It's a great question. It's right along with the question of, are we going to try to make dinner together? We're not used to spending this much time together. How are we doing? Are we not going to bump into each other? We're both in a workspace. You know, Lisette and I are working together a couple of feet apart. Are we not going to start bumping into each other? Just gets a phone call. Does the other one run out of the room so they have privacy? You know, these are all important questions as we try to reconfigure how to go forward. Parenting is already probably one of the most challenging things in the world. And I think it starts with a conversation to say, we're in a new normal for parenting. We're being asked to co-parent. We're in the house together. We're being asked to do something we haven't really had to do. How are we doing so far? And also, is there something, a generous question is two questions. Number one, is there something I'm doing that's making your attempts to be a great parent more difficult? Is there something I'm doing or not doing that's making your usual dedication and hard work to be a great mom or a great dad even more difficult? Could you please give me that feedback? And I promise to receive it without getting defensive or counterattacking. And the second question is there anything that I've done that is helping you so much and is making our co-parenting a joy? Something I've brought to the party that is making it so much more fun or easier for you or better for you, that if you tell me about it, that'd be great. It encouraged me to do more of it. So it's the communication, right? Stopping, calling time out, and having a communication as parent to parent about what you're doing that could make it even better, what you might be doing that's standing in the way of it getting better, of being more coordinated and on the same page, supporting one another, complimenting one another, and what you're doing right that you want encouragement to continue to do right.
That is fantastic. I see, Mary Beth, we do have a list of questions we can send to Dr. Ken. Before we switch over, Mary Beth, anything to add?
I just want to say personally, thank you so much for doing this for everyone. It's such a great opportunity to share grace and love and hope. And I knew that you'd be the perfect person to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If I may send gratitude as well. And I'd love to welcome Peter Mendiola, who is the silent voice in this conversation today. And Peter, thank you for hosting this, Corey. And let me turn this over to you, Peter, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Druck. I'm sure everyone on the call really appreciates you sharing your time, your wisdom, and I think most of all, just being a glowing source of positivity in our lives today. Thank you. Huge thank you. Also, I think it'd be disrespectful of me to close with my words. And I'd love to put you on the spot and ask you to give us a couple more words of positivity to send us off on our day. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And thank you for being the kind of leader, all of you, for being the kind of leaders that would think about doing something like this, that it's part of your ongoing commitment to bringing out the best in everybody in your circle, in the Coldwell banker community. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to talk with, to hear your wonderful questions. And I think this is that one of those moments in truth that we will all look back on. And I'd like us all to be able to look back on it as we, maybe some of us have, on things that have happened years ago after 9/11. You know, I'm old enough to remember the days after President Kennedy was shot. I've been a part of so many historic moments in our nation, in our world. But I'd like for all of us to be able to look back when the sky clears and in the years to come, and in the ways we talk with our children about this, or the ways they talk about it, and the ways we all talk about what we've done to become the smarter, more courageous, more faithful, more loving, sensitive, kind version of ourselves. And to be able to look back and say, you know, that's what we did. That's what we chose. We took all the pain, all the fear, all the anguish, all the adversity of what happened, and we transformed it into becoming the better version of ourselves on all levels. And we did that, and we can look back and feel proud of ourselves, and to know that our children and future generations will have learned from it and will be safer because of it. And I leave you with that thought and my gratitude. And I look forward to hugging you all and seeing you all in person when the time is right for us to do that. In the meantime, everybody, please stay well.